Today I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful traditional style Welsh dresser. And for this project I have used a beche wood, that's spelt O-B-E-C-H-E, and it's just a nice soft wood. And you'll need a 1.5mm thick sheet, 2.5mm and a 3x3 strip, so that's 1/16 of an inch, 3/32 of an inch and 1/8 of an inch square strip. Do have a look at my tips for working with wood video, and that will give you some ideas of other woods that would be suitable for this project. You'll need your craft knife. By now you know I use this Swan Morton knife, which takes a 10A blade and will easily cut wood up to 3mm thick, 1/8 of an inch thick. A steel ruler for measuring and for cutting your wood along with your craft knife. Nice sharp pencil for accurate marking. And then to create the grooves here in the back panel I've used a screwdriver along with my steel rule. To shape the mouldings that we've got at the top here, under the drawers and at the sides, you'll need just a piece of paper to make the templates, and a pair of scissors to cut those out, and then a scribe which we use to score the pattern into the wood. And a scribe is just a tool with a nice sharp point at the end. This is out of an old electrical kit, but it does the job perfectly. Clamps or clothes pegs, which we use to attach the mouldings to the wood at the sides, and you'll also need some masking tape for when we're attaching the bigger parts together. That holds everything together whilst the glue dries. Glue, I use this Gorilla wood glue. It bonds really quickly, so it saves having to wait around too long when the parts are drying. And then to varnish the dresser I've used a dark oak varnish, and a nice dark varnish is more traditional, but obviously you can use any varnish you like or any colour paint. For cutting the strip wood you'll need a mitre block and saw, and a lot of people ask me where I get these from, but you should be able to get them from some Doll's House suppliers. I know Minimum World do them, or you can just search on eBay or Google for mitre block and saw, and that's those. And then a couple of grades of sandpaper, a fine grade around about 500 and a stronger one about 120, and I cut them into small pieces to make them more manageable. But you'll also need a sheet for when we come to create the beveled edges in the top and the base top. And I think that's about everything we're going to need. The cutting lists are coming up next, and then we'll get started. Okay, so we're going to begin by attaching the mouldings to the side pieces and the back sections. So I've got some glue here that I've dispensed onto a piece of card, and I'm going to apply it with a cocktail stick. So just apply glue to the back of the moulding, and then attach it to the piece so it's right along that top edge, and so that the top edges of both pieces are flush, and you can just check that with your finger, like that, and the remaining one. Okay, and then I'm just using another cocktail stick just to remove the glue from along the joins. And this is quite important if you're going to be varnishing, because varnish doesn't take over the top of glue, so you want to make sure that the joins are as clean as possible. And then you can use clamps for this, but I'm going to use clothes pegs just because I've got more of them. And you need to secure mouldings to the wood, because as the glue dries the moulding will try to curl upwards. So just secure them until you've left enough time for the glue to set. Okay, so once you've allowed enough time for the glue to dry, remove the pegs and then sand the pieces on all sides. So just hold it against the sandpaper and sweep it along and just go in one direction. Try not to rock it back and forth as you'll round off the edges. And do that on all edges, and that just ensures that we've got a nice flush piece. And then take one of the mouldings and just lay it next to one of the legs and just go along with your finger and make sure as well that that's flush. And sometimes you'll find that your wood is slightly thicker, depending on how it's been cut, it's slightly thicker than it should be. So I found that my mouldings there were just standing a bit taller than the leg, so just make sure that that's flush as well. And if not, just hold the piece against the sandpaper and go round in a circular motion. And just do it a few times and then try it again until you've got a nice flush fit. Okay, so now cut a piece of paper that is the same size as your side mouldings. We're going to make a template now to shape the moulding. So fold the piece of paper in half and then take your pencil and from the centre just draw a little curve and then go up and then come down again at the end. So we're just making a little curve in the middle there, like that, and then cut that out. And open that out. And you can then just copy that onto the piece of wood for the side moulding. So then take your scribe and keep that template for the other side piece, just put that to one side. And then just go over the pencil line, just lightly, just to score that line into the wood. So you're not trying to cut through or anything. We're just making a slight groove over the pencil line. And I find that by doing this first, it really helps when you come to cut the piece out. It helps keep the knife blade on track. Okay, and then take your craft knife, and I've just put a new blade in for this. Makes it easier to cut them out. And then I can't stress enough just to be really careful when you're doing this. Always be aware of where your fingers are. So just begin by making that groove slightly deeper. Just take your time, and it's worth practicing this as well on a scrap of wood. It's a really good technique to know. And we're going with the grain here, so it makes it a bit easier, so that piece is free. Just little sections at a time. And try not to pull the wood away either, as you might split the wood. I'm just using the very tip of the blade here. There, and that piece is free as well. So once the pieces are free, you can take a piece of fine grade sandpaper and just smooth all of those cuts. And smooth any sort of corners you've got. And I'm sweeping the sandpaper from front to back as well, just to make a nice sort of rounded edge at the bottom there. Working that into a nice sort of rounded curve. So just keep sanding until you've got a nice shape, and then repeat the process on the remaining side piece, and then also cut a larger template, and you can use that for the front mouldings, and do exactly the same thing. Keep a similar shape to the one you've used on the side. Once all of your mouldings are shaped, we're going to attach the side mouldings to the side pieces, and I'll just show you the one that I've done. From the side, we want the moulding to be sitting towards the front of that front piece, so it's actually attached to the moulding on the side piece there. I don't know if you can see that there. So turn the side piece over, so it's sitting on the mouldings, and then your side piece as well, so the nicest side of your moulding is facing downwards. And apply glue along the top edge, and then press those two pieces together. Make sure you find a nice flat area on your cutting mat so that moulding is flush at the front of the side piece. And once the glue is completely dried, we can sand them as well, facing down on the sandpaper, so that we've got a lovely flat side piece. Okay, just carefully turn that over, and then that piece can be left to dry. So once you've allowed enough time for the glue to dry, place the side piece face down on the sandpaper and just go round in circular motions, and I've already done these, but that will just make a nice flush sort of front edge to the piece there. Do that with both of them, and then take the legs, and these are the longer of the legs. The central legs, if you remember, were just slightly shorter. So take the longer legs, and we're going to glue a side piece between each pair of legs. So just apply glue along that side of each side piece. And then glue it into place so that the top of each piece is flush. So the top of the leg is sitting right at the top of that side piece. Just carefully press that all together. And then just slide that across. In fact, I'll just get rid of that excess glue for all those joins. And slide that across there, and that can be left to dry. I'll just do the second one. Put that over there to dry as well. And then taking those shorter central legs, we're going to glue a draw divide between each one. Exactly the same thing, so that the top of each piece is flush. So glue at either short end. Press those together. And the remaining piece as well. Okay, so take one of the side pieces and turn it over so that it's sort of flat side facing up. And then take one of the back sections and apply glue along the edge. And then glue that into place so it sits on the back leg. and so that it's flush with the top of the side piece. Just press that down. And then take one of the top pieces and apply glue along one long edge and one short edge. And then glue that into place so it sits on the inside of these joined pieces. And again, so that it's flush with the top of the pieces. And bring that back piece in to join up with it. Make sure it's going right into that bottom corner. And just use your finger to check that it's flush as well along the top. And then we're going to attach a bottom piece along the bottom edge of this flat side piece. So again, apply glue to one short edge and one long edge. Sorry, I'm working sort of back to front, but let me just pop that into place and I'll turn it round. And again, push it right into that back corner. And so that it's flush along that bottom edge there. And then apply glue to a short edge and long edge of the moulding, and so that the nicest edge is going to be along the front there. And that will attach just underneath the end of that bottom piece, and so that it sits towards the front of the leg. So again, this whole front section is flush. Just use the fingertip to make sure that that's all sitting flush and square. And then take one of the drawer divides with the legs, and we're going to attach that on there. So apply glue along all these exposed edges. And then attach that again so it's flush at the top and at the front. Just carefully press that into place. I'm just getting that sort of bottom bit flush as well with the bottom of the divide. And then just take a small piece of masking tape, and we're just going to put a piece over that side while the glue dries. So put it over there like that and pull it quite tight, but make sure you don't push the top and bottom piece out of place. And then that piece can be just left to one side to dry. And now we want to create a mirror image of that piece, so that our central legs will be in the middle here, and this side piece then becomes the right hand side piece. So this time we're just sort of doing it back to front. So take one of the back sections, and then this will go on that side, so as it's facing down it will go on the left hand leg. Leave that piece to one side to dry. So we've got a left and a right hand piece there, and then we'll join them with the central section. Okay, so once the glue is dried on the side pieces, you can just pop the right hand side piece to one side and then apply glue along the remaining back section, along the short edge, glue's going a bit tacky, and then with the piece on your worktop, just glue that back section to the back leg so that the top of both of these pieces is flush. Press those together. And then take the central top piece, and I'm just checking here for the nicest edge, and that's the one that I want at the front. So apply glue along a long and a short edge. And then push that into place on the sort of inside edge of the joined pieces. I'm just checking at the back that all of these edges are flush. So just carefully manoeuvre it until it's all straight. You can just check that by running your finger along the joins. To push that bit up a bit. Get rid of that glue from in there. So that may stop the drawer from gliding in. And then you again take the bottom piece. Again, I'm checking for the nicest edge. And the same thing with that. So it should be flush into that inside corner, and obviously level with the piece here at the bottom of the drawer. press that into place. And then take the central moulding, and again check that you've got your nicest side at the front. And then attach that into place just underneath that bottom piece. Again, so it's all nice and flush along that front edge. Just holding that together until the glue begins to take. You can see the dresser begin to take shape now. Okay, and then finally we're going to attach the remaining piece. So just check first of all you've got nice sort of flush edges there, and that everything sits where it should. And if not, there may be just some slight sanding to be done. And I think I'm just going to take a little bit off this edge so that sits more square there. So in that case I'm going to leave this glue to dry now, so that I can then gently sand the edge off once the glue is completely dry, and then attach the remaining piece. Okay, so once the glue had dried, I just did some very gentle sanding along this edge and sort of halfway from there. So just sort of check that the piece fits, and then just make very, very slight adjustments and keep checking until you've got a nice snug fit there and everything along the front is lined up and you've got a nice sort of flush top edge as well. And then apply glue to these exposed edges. The edge of the moulding as well. And then lay it on your work surface that way round, and then press the remaining side into place. Just gently press it all together, just making sure that everything is here staying in alignment. And just hold it until your glue begins to take. And you can turn it round. Just get rid of that excess glue from underneath. And then I'm just going to use some masking tape now to hold that into place. Just going to put a piece over that end, and just be very careful so you don't knock out this end moulding. Attach that lightly under there. Keep making sure that everything's staying where it should. And I think I'm just going to put a piece around the front as well, like that, just to really hold it all into place. Okay, so once you've allowed enough time for the glue to dry, remove all of your masking tape, and then there's just a couple of checks we want to do before we attach the shelf. So place it on a flat piece of your worktop, and that's not normally your cutting mat, that's normally bobbled a bit over time. And then just gently press the top, and if it's rocking, you need to then sand a couple of the legs. So if it was rocking from this corner to this corner, then you'd sand the opposite legs. So, and you just sand a little tiny bit off and then check again until it's completely flat like this one. And I did have to just sand a little bit off two of the legs. And the other check is turn the piece upside down like that and take a spare piece of wood and just place it on those central legs. And again, just check that that's flat. And again, if it's rocking from one side, then you sand the opposite legs. And that piece is okay, and I did just have to take a little bit off of those central legs. So that's the 2 checks that you want to do, just to make sure that everything's how it should be and that you're going to get a level dresser base. And then take your shelf piece, and we want to cut a 3mm square section, or 1/8 of an inch square from each corner, and that's to fit around the outer legs. So just make a pencil mark, 3mm or 1/8 of an inch from each end. Like that. And then turn the piece around, and again another 3mm, 1/8 of an inch going in the opposite direction, like that. The sun's coming out now, and 2 minutes ago it was snowing. Okay, and then whenever you're cutting a section from wood, always cut against the grain first. So the grain runs across the long edge, so I want to cut down the short edge first. And just use the tip of your knife, and just work it through the wood there. And then you can turn and cut away in the direction of the grain. And that just snips out easily then. And make sure that your cut is straight, like that, so do all 4 corners. Okay, so once you've cut out the corners, turn the table over and just apply a dot of glue to each of those inside legs or central legs. That, and then into each corner of the shelf piece. And as with everything else, make sure that you've got the nicest side of the shelf facing up, and then just manoeuvre onto those legs and then onto the outside legs, and you may just need to sort of move them a little bit to get it into position. And you also want to make sure that these central legs are flush with the sort of front and back edges of the shelf. And if not, just very carefully sort of push them into place. And also push the corner legs into place. And then I just want to turn it over, and I'm just going to measure that I've got the same amount of leg here at the bottom. With longer pieces of wood, you may find they're trying to curl upwards, so you may just need to slightly pull it down at either edge, but just check first with your ruler to see if it is actually in the right place. That one just needs to come down a little bit. I'm going to pull that leg forward a bit so it's flush at the front there. Check that back leg as well. And that one, and that all looks fine, so I just want to hold that into position while the glue begins to take. And then keep making sure it's in the right place. And I've just cut off some bits of masking tape here, and I'm going to put them around each corner so that I'm pushing that leg into that corner cut out. The same there. And along those back legs as well. Like that. And that piece can then be left to dry. So once the glue is completely dried, just go along each edge of the shelf with a piece of fine grade sandpaper and just hold it at an angle, and you're just sort of rounding over the edges. And it just makes a very small change, but it just takes away again from that sort of harsh square edge. So just very gently go along in between the legs, and then on the sort of bottom edge as well. And that just makes for a nicer finish. Do that around all sides, and then we're ready to attach the central legs. So we're just attaching them so that they sit directly beneath that central piece. So just apply a tiny dot of glue to the foot, and then glue it into place so that it's sitting directly underneath that leg. Just look from the front as well. And use your finger to make sure that it's flush along the front of that shelf and square on as well. I want to move that over a little bit. And then do the remaining 3. Okay, so once you've allowed enough time for the glue to dry on the feet, you can just test it again on your flat surface, just to make sure that everything's level. And if it's rocking a little bit, then you may need to just sand those central feet, just very slightly, just until it's level. And a little bit of sanding was needed on a couple of mine, and that's now nice and level. Okay, so take a sheet of sandpaper and the dresser base top, and we're going to bevel both of the short edges and one long edge. So start with the short edges and just hold the piece at an angle against the sheet of sandpaper, and then just sweep it towards you, not applying too much pressure. And keeping the piece at the same angle, and you'll see that's just starting to bevel off there. And then just keep going until you've got a nice even bevel. Like that. And then do the other end. Like that. And then when you're working with a slightly longer piece of wood, I like to attach the sandpaper to the worktop, just with a piece of masking tape. Like that. And then you can actually hold the piece with both hands so that you get an even bevel. If you hold it in the middle when you're working with a larger piece, the bevel tends not to be even all the way across. So doing it this way will ensure a nice even bevel. So again, you're just holding it at an angle, not applying too much pressure with your hands, and just sweep it towards you. And that's just starting to go, so just keep doing that until you've got a nice even bevel all around these 3 edges. So once you're happy you've got a nice even bevel all around those edges, we're going to attach it to the base unit so that the bevel is facing down, so the nice flat edge is at the top here. So apply glue to the top of the unit. And then when you attach it, you want the back sort of straight edge to be flush with the back straight edge of the base, and then leaving an even overhang at either side, and that will be about the depth of the bevel you've made. So use your fingers to make sure that it's flush along the back. And also just check that you've got the same amount at either side. And you can do that by turning it over and just having a look. Just use a spare cocktail stick to remove the excess glue. Like that. And then, now I'm happy that that's in the right place, I'm actually going to use some masking tape to hold that down. So I'm going to put a couple of pieces right over the top like that. Press that down. Put another piece across the front. I'm just going to put a couple of pieces over the back. And I'm pulling quite tightly. And then whenever I'm putting something on where there's drawers, I like to use clamps as well and just clip that together inside the drawer openings. As glue dries, the wood tends to lift away or curl upwards, so you do need to clamp it down. Starting to get a bit top heavy now. I'll just put a couple of more in there. And I'm just going to check around the back again to make sure that the corners are staying down. Now I think I'm going to use a little bit more tape at each corner. And the reason I'm not using clamps here, because it's quite fragile under here, so I don't want to risk sort of breaking the wood at the bottom. I'll choose a couple more bits of tape over that corner and pull them down quite tightly. Same at the other side. Like that. And then I'm going to leave that to dry. Okay, so once you've allowed enough time for the glue to dry, remove the clamps and the tape, and then just use a piece of fine grade sandpaper to go over this top, just in sort of circular motions, and that's just to remove any sort of rough areas that the tape may have left along there, and to prepare it for varnishing. And then that piece can be put to one side. Now in the cutting list I always advise to cut the pieces needed for the drawers after construction of the main unit, and that's just because misplacement for any of these pieces will affect the size of the drawer opening. So it's always best to construct first, measure, and then cut the pieces required. So when measuring the opening you just need the width, height and depth, and then I normally just deduct 0.5 millimetre, so I think that's 1/32 of an inch from each measurement, just to allow sort of for the varnish, which will add thickness to the piece, and so that you get a nice sort of gliding movement when you put the drawer in and out. So once you've cut the pieces, apply glue to each side of the base piece. And then you can attach the side pieces to the outer edge, so that the front and back of the piece is flush with the front and back of the base. And then just allow that to dry off for a few seconds, just slide that along there. And I've got one here where the sides are now dry, so you'd now apply glue to the front and back. Like so. And then attach your front and back pieces again so that the sides of them are flush with the sides that we've already put in place. And then just carefully press that all together. And that can be left to one side to dry. And then when it has dried, you can sand it. Have your sandpaper on your worktop and just sand the top and bottom in circular motions like that. And then you can do the sides, just going along the sandpaper in one direction so we don't round off the edges. And then that should just slide nice and easily in and out of the drawer opening. And come out when you just tap it like that. And there's a little bit of space around each edge, and then when I varnish the drawer, that will still fit nicely in there. And then once you've completed your drawers, this base piece is ready for varnishing. And I never actually varnish inside the drawers. You can just do a little tiny bit around the edge so that you can't see the wood once the drawers are in place. But everywhere else, give a nice coat of varnish and just sand, paying attention to the joins like I said before, because your varnish won't take over the glue residue. Okay, so the piece has been varnished and the drawers, and I've given that 2 coats. And with the drawers, after the first coat, I just check to make sure that they still fitted. And after varnishing, you may find that a little bit of sanding is needed just to make them fit nicely into the opening. And then I just gave a second coat on the front of the drawer. And now we can fit the handles. So just make a pencil mark in the centre of the drawer front, and don't make a dot because that will dent the wood, so just make a really sort of faint pencil mark. And then I'm using these sort of brass drop handles, and these are available in my Etsy store. I'll put a link below. And I find that you can just attach these with the normal wood glue or PVA if that's what you're using. And they've got this handy little sort of drop handle that you can hold on to. If you're using a brass knob or something, you might want to use tweezers to help with the positioning. Just apply a little bit of glue on the back and then attach it so that the centre of the handle is in line with the central pencil mark you've just made. And I'm just sort of using my eye to position it centrally from sort of top to bottom. I think that's probably a couple of millimetres at each edge. Then when you're happy that's in the centre, you can press that down. And then fit your remaining handles. And there is the completed dresser base.